Robert Stigwood did, which was really new at the time, was to release the single before the movie came out.
In an unprecedented move, Stigwood decided to release the Bee Gees' ballad, How Deep Is Your Love, in November of '77, a month before Saturday Night Fever opened.
The idea is to try to get as much attention, awareness of that movie before it comes out. If you have a hit song with a big artist like the Bee Gees, it's going to attract a lot of attention to the film.
How deep is your love? Is your love? How deep is your love? I really mean to learn.
Stigwood's plan worked perfectly. How Deep Is Your Love quickly rose to the top of the charts, creating the perfect launch pad for the film.
Presenting the world premiere of Paramount Pictures' Saturday Night Fever, starring John Travolta.
When the film debuted on December 7th, 1977, Fever was already surrounded by a frenzy. Paramount arranged for an old-fashioned Hollywood premiere at Mann's Chinese Theater with the biggest stars of the 70s.
Tonight, from Hollywood, the Bee Gees, Peter Frampton, Andy Gibb, Penny Marshall, John Ritter, Suzanne Summers, John Travolta.
There hasn't been a premiere in this town, in this scope, and this excitement in many, many years. Is it uncomfortable? Is it kind of hard to handle because it's bigger than life and everything?
It is. And I saw the movie for the first time bigger than life. I mean, bigger than it ever had been. So it was like a fantasy. I mean, it was just like a dream tonight.
The audiences were awed as well. Saturday Night Fever topped the box office for weeks and went on to make more than $285 million.
It was just so sensational from start to finish, you know, the way it hit society.
It's like being strapped on a rocket, you know, and all of a sudden, boom. I mean, it was like hot, you know, everybody wanted to wear the white suit and look like us, you know what I mean?
That was the magic of Fever. The whole world wanted to dance.
Rather than heralding the death of disco, the movie ushered in its heydays. The music and the lifestyle were celebrated at nightclubs like New York's Studio 54.
You would see lots of clones of Tony if you went to 54, and those, you know, printed polyester shirts. I remember them very well.
Every shop you went had the white suit, and, you know, everybody had the hairstyle, and everybody had the chains, and all the ladies had the stacked shoes, and the
Lawyers, judges, people who never bought records before were taking dancing lessons.
Do it, yeah. Oh, that's what you do, and then you do it.
But that's what was happening. I mean, all over the world.
The soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever went on to sell 22 million copies. It reigned as the most successful soundtrack in history until The Bodyguard topped it in '93.
The soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever stayed atop the Billboard 200 for 24 consecutive weeks.
You're selling like 1 million a week, and all of a sudden it got more and more, and we were going, what's going on?
The Bee Gees became the first group since the Beatles to play singles at number 1 and 2 on the pop chart the same week.
Other record companies were being paid to press the album because the record company couldn't keep the pace up. Just could not keep making enough albums.
The Bee Gees' massive success inspired a new wave of dance music. Even tested rock veterans were capitalizing on the disco craze.
There were a lot of people who were jumping on the bandwagon right after Saturday Night Fever. That's when suddenly you had Do You Think I'm Sexy by Rod Stewart, and you had Miss You by the Rolling Stones, and American Bandstand started having disco dance contests, and it got ugly.
And by the end of the decade, the music was playing itself out.
When you've got an album that's selling 1 million a week, you're not exactly worried that you're going to be labeled. You think, Jesus, this is the peak of our career.
You could almost spin the dial and you'd hear a song from Saturday Night Fever on every radio station, any given moment. There had to be the inevitable backlash.
Dancing, it can't last forever. It's a short-lived kind of thing.
In the summer of 1979, disco's fate was sealed by bonfires of vinyl across the country.
They started burning disco records. There was a hostility towards it, towards the end.
We're talking about these big records, 12-inch records, and the paper covers that they came in, so there was something to burn. It was a huge, big, we hate disco.
And the Bee Gees felt the heat.
We were sentenced to 15 years to life by the media for making music that everybody went out and bought.
All those radio stations that had played all our music before the fever period started removing our songs from their libraries.
That, to us, is indecent.
The Gibb brothers backed away from the spotlight for most of the 1980s. They retreated to the studio and produced albums for other artists. But over the years, the disco stigma faded, and once again, audiences have embraced the Bee Gees sound and the lasting impact of their songs.
I think it's great when you can hear a song and get a great image of a period in history, which is, you know, a few songs can do. And to us, it's a great legacy to have.
Staying Alive is like the national anthem of the 70s. I think any group today would be very grateful for a Fever because the songs themselves are our babies. I mean, we wrote those songs with a lot of love and a lot of affection, and they're like our kids. And I'm very proud of that music, very proud.
Next, the legacy of the Fever and the unlikely owner of that white suit.
It was almost like the key to something that he missed in his childhood or in his adolescence and always wanted to recapture.
When behind the music,
Can I wipe off your forehead?
Why not? Sure, go ahead.
and its influence is still being felt today.
It was pop culture then, and it's pop culture now, because pop culture hasn't changed that much in these years.
I love to watch you dance. I just love it, watching you dance.
Yeah.
2 decades after its release, Saturday Night Fever is as relevant as ever, and much of the credit goes to John Travolta and the unforgettable character he created.
Tony, it's only dancing, Jesus.
Only dancing? Forget it, Annette. If you're not going to take this seriously, I don't want to dance.
The brilliant thing about John Travolta is that he was able to make you like a character who is basically unlikable.
Why do you hate me so much? All I ever did to you was like you.
Give me a break, huh?
Tony Manero became an icon, a working-class hero that legions of young men worshipped.
Kiss me.
And one of those young men was a budding film critic named Gene Siskel.
Gene went to see that movie, and it struck a chord deep inside of him, and he went back to see it over and over and over again. I'm sure that he saw it more than 20 times.
He never got over Saturday Night Fever, Gene Siskel. It was his heartbeat. It was his soul. He identified with my character, wished he was the character.
I think in a way, Saturday Night Fever was the teenage experience he never had. He would have liked to have had the clothes and been at the disco, and I think that Tony Manero just represented an alter ego for him.
Until his death in 1999, Saturday Night Fever remained Gene Siskel's favorite film. In fact, he was so captivated by it, he bought John Travolta's white suit at a charity auction.
He was very proud of it because it represented something tangible to him, not just a souvenir from a movie, but almost like Rosebud, the sled in Citizen Kane. It was almost like the key to something that he missed in his childhood or in his adolescence and always wanted to recapture.
More than a film, Saturday Night Fever was a milestone that perfectly captured a moment in time.
It's a time capsule. It's an incredibly good representation of a time and a place in the late 1970s in urban America where a lot of disaffected youth are looking for some sense of identity.
It's a comment, I think, on that whole era. The way Rebel Without a Cause was in the 50s, I think this film in many ways is that to the 70s.
And that movie really has held up, and it'll be fun in 25 years to look at because its themes are universal. Everybody understands dance. Everybody understands taking your gift and seeing how far it will take you.
That film really, really represented what I think every young person wanted.
Though the fashions may have faded, the message and the music live on.
It's part of history now, it's part of the culture. People will be dancing to Fever in the year 2030, and even long after we're gone, there's going to be people dancing Saturday Night Fever. It's out of our hands, it's in history.
It was a valuable form of music in terms of what it tried to say. It was about celebration. There's nothing wrong with music being a form of celebration.
It had dynamic to it and dimension to it, and that kind of effect is hard to kill, even over time.